Your show's rubbish.
Hello and welcome to the Trout podcast. I'm Gary Forrestal. I'm here with my colleague and colleague, acquaintance, Mars.
Yeah, friend
and,
by now.
Yeah, we are the presenters of the Trout Spinners. If you've just joined us, what have you been doing with your life? Better things.
Skiing.
Skiing. Yeah. Does he ski? Yes or no? Does he ski? Yes or no? But if you've just joined us, this is your first episode, then welcome. And this is a retrospective kind of love letter, we describe it, to the Ricky Gervais show that aired on XFM in 2002, 3 and 4. And we're still quite a new podcast, aren't we? But we actually, it feels like we've done quite a few episodes now, haven't we? This is about episode 30. Familiar now, friends. And I hope that's kind of what it feels like with the audience. We're kind of, we've got, we're growing the audience. Yeah. But one thing I love, and we'll get to it at the end of the podcast, is the interaction and feedback that we have from this. And so if you are new, please do get in touch with us. We love it. We very sad people. We don't have a lot going on.
Speak for yourself.
Well, I am essentially, but I'm speaking for you too. And no, we love your feedback. So this is episode 22, I believe we're reviewing this week. But before we get to that, Mars, how have you been?
Yeah, not bad. My girlfriend's been away for a few days, so I'm now in the very about a while. So it's been nice and free and easy and relaxed in this environment. So I call my own.
Yeah, she's in Nuremberg, isn't she, for the trial?
As far away as she can get.
The hate.
You've now caught me in the midst of an anxiety tornado where I'm like frantically going around and preparing for her arrival. So I'm like mopping the floors, I'm cleaning the toilets, I'm deep sanitizing every surface, cleaning windows. Never thought I'd clean a window. Wasn't that bothered. I could honestly, live through a tenancy of a flat and never touch a window. Like it's raining now. That kind of does the job for you.
Yeah, no.
And still because I know she'll come back, like Kim and Aggie, and she'll be like analysing and scrutinising the level of cleanliness that has been maintained during her absence.
Well, I can vouch for Miles in the sense I met Miles's girlfriend a few times.
You were about to say her name, weren't you?
I know because Miles like I would say just before this I said her name and we had to edit that out. So that with Miles is very sensitive about saying that.
There's nothing but an anecdote said twice, so it's going to be great.
I know. No, well, we had to. Actually, I might as well come clean. What happened was we recorded about 10 minutes or so, and Miles forgot to turn the mic on or whatever, or he wasn't recording through the mic, so we had to record it all again. So we're in the midst of recording stuff again that we've already heard. But yeah, I've met Miles's girlfriend, and she's lovely girl. Good
Correct answer.
I'm pleased. She's a great dancer, absolutely. But I'm pleased she's with Miles, but quite strict, I would say.
Yeah.
I'm scrambling around for a word above strict, but I can't find it. It's somewhere between strict and dictatorial. Like a dictator and strict person. It's kind of. But she's
nice. I'm sure she'll appreciate that when she doesn't listen to the show. But go on.
Absolutely. Well, she sometimes does listen live because we do it.
Say what you want. We didn't mention a fat ass, did we?
Yeah. No. Don't. You are in so much trouble.
I would never say that. Karl would.
I'm gonna come clean here now as well. Mars and I were speaking on the phone, and he said because we record the podcast in our homes, and Mars is at his home, and often his girlfriend is watching, but she's not in the background of the shot. She's like on the bed or whatever. And Mars went to the toilet once. He only told me this the other day, and he said, and his girlfriend said that I was saying, it was before we started recording the podcast, I was saying to myself something like, I'm Gary Forrestal. I'm Gary like, hi, I'm Gary Forrestal. Like, almost, I promise I was not practicing saying my name or anything on the podcast, but I do kind of talk to myself. Do you? I mean, I think a lot of people do talk to her, but it was embarrassing. I forgot that Mars's girlfriend was in the room. But there you go. There's a bit of.
She says she likes the first bit, and then she gets bored. So I think it's probably just the length. No.
Yeah.
But we're not making it for her. We're making it for you, dear listener, who likes the XFM shows and Ricky Gervais and all that shit.
Absolutely.
How was your week, Gary?
Yeah, it's all right.
That's great. Shall we move on?
Yeah. No, it's okay. I was just busy with things, trying to catch up with work, and I'm surprised you say you haven't been out. And I've been out to the supermarket. I had a little trip to the chemist. I've been wearing my mask a lot more. Actually.
Have you?
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I went somewhere the other day where you have to wear a mask.
Sauna.
Sauna. The bulldog. Actually, yeah. If you don't know Brighton, you won't know. I've been wearing my mask more, and at first I felt very self-conscious, but since then I've got more used to it. I often wear it around my ears, but down.
I think you should have always been wearing a mask. It does go with your look, like the Dark Lord.
People seem to sort of they didn't run away from me as much, at least. So hide my mouth and nose, obviously a good thing.
But when you've also got your shark eyes. Gary, if we ever post a picture of Gary, which we won't, he looks like a shark, like a great white shark. Because your eyes are very
No, a dead shark.
Yeah.
Dead.
Selfridges, a dead shark in Selfridges.
Apparently I've got a dead shark. My eyes are just dark and they're quite narrow. But yeah, thanks, mate.
Describing what eyes are. Have you done very little preparation for today's show?
Well, Mars, I would describe my preparation for every show we've ever done as none. So very little is an increase.
Zilcho none at all, baby.
Seriousness, I do a bit of
That's right.
But
check your notes.
I think, and I would say with this show, I had 4 quotes, like 4 decent quotes. And I looked at the time, and we were only 2 minutes in, 2.5 minutes. It's got a great intro. Anyway, we'll come to that. But yeah, it's so coming up. We've got our general thoughts on the show, our favourite bits. Then we will have our favourite quotes. We'll have a rundown for our favourite quotes. That's after just having a general nice discussion about the show and themes and things like that. And then at the end, we'll have XFM in the community, where we'll be reading out your feedback. So stay tuned for that. Miles, we're doing things in reverse a little bit this week. What are your initial thoughts of the show?
Well, let's start straight away and say that it's episode 22, 18th of January 2003. Ricky investigates the effect of blunt objects on the skull, and Stephen's feelings are hurt. And Karl explores his sexuality. We'll be including a link to the original episode in the description of this podcast. So once you've listened to the podcast, which we do recommend you go out and listen to the show before, and then you come back now with Miles and Gary.
Bye.
You're here now.
Hi. Yeah.
Hi. How you doing? Gary, how much is a bottle of milk? A 2-litre bottle of milk?
About 120.
No, I did go on the Sainsbury's website. How much is it? How much? Well, we'll assess if you're still, a man on the street, or whether you're a man in show business.
Well, I think about 120.
It's not 120. It's 80 pence.
80 pence. That's what I was going to say.
80 pence.
20 pence. Yeah, that's a little test they do to see if Ricky was. And as Steve rightly says, you were always like, I can imagine Ricky being 20 and have never been even shown a dancing, not famous at all, and not knowing anything about those little like not bothered. He's just a bit of milk. He'll just buy it and not bothered. Whatever. Hand over a fiver. Hopefully get change back. Yeah, that's a good summary. of what goes on. It's actually very hard to summarize this particular show because there's so many different sort of things that go on in it that are, I would say, between very good and sort of classic. So it's very hard to summarize it. But in general, what are your initial sort of thoughts of the show and how the quality of it?
So my enjoyment of the show is overshadowed by a big event that happens towards the end when Ricky calls Karl a dickhead for getting the Rockbusters clue different. Something we talked about last week was it's a different experience listening to these shows now and scrutinizing them on that. But my enjoyment this week has been overshadowed because it's one of the parts of the episode where he's trying to do the Rockbuster clue free the pain, and he was saying he got the initials wrong.
It's so, by the way, I've always thought, like, I can so, like, if I was doing that Rockbusters clue, it's so easy to get that wrong. It's so easy to go FD because free the pain, obviously, but it's FD.
Yeah.
But it's like that fuck up amongst all fuck ups is like one of the least worst ever.
Yeah.
So it's so understandable.
Yeah.
But it's still fun
Ricky,
for Ricky to take the piss a bit. But yeah, I agree. He goes a bit too far.
He really calls him out on this episode, and he says,
yeah,
dickhead.
He goes serious. Yeah.
And even Stephen, like, he goes, huh? Like, the laugh he expresses is in complete and utter shock. And I think he's shocked that Ricky reacted so vehemently and aggressively, because I've always thought this about, and then for Karl to feel worse about it, like he really beat himself up about it. He was going, I know, I'm sorry. Is that I've had a lot on, and then Ricky was saying, it's worse. You think of this. You're not even meeting your standards.
Yeah.
Our excuses, we don't care. And I was like, I get really annoyed at Ricky at that stage because I'm just like, I do understand the fact that he puts into no work, but to have a go at Karl for like at least trying.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Ricky could easily. The bit that bothers me isn't like when he says you're not even meeting your standards, because that is at least sort of couched in a joke and trying to be funny. But I do agree with you that Ricky has this thing on the show, and it happens about 5, 6, 7 times, not much over the course of the whole show, like not this week's, but the whole series, where he turns serious and he turns quite nasty.
Yeah.
This is one of those examples, but that's what I said. The new year brings in, like, this wouldn't have happened, I think, before the year. It's kind of like a new thing. And the first thing that I'd thought is like, the show is topped and tailed. Like, and again, I'm not that bothered about this in terms of, I don't think it's that out of order. But it technically, actually just on, because I find it funny. But if you think about it, think how out of order this is to Karl. Like, it's so insulting. Basically, they come in. Ricky says, not in these words, but he says, I've done fuck all, and Steve will have to help me out. And then he goes, no, actually, Steve's done fuck all as well. Karl, you're going to have to drive the show. Now, Karl, I'm absolutely certain Karl puts in a lot of effort. Like,
yeah, we know that.
Like to thinking of that interview, finding someone to interview, for what do we need? He's done one this week. So that's so. And then at the end, when what you've referred to, where he's saying basically, we don't care. We're not trying, so at the beginning and the end of the show, it's like baiting Karl. Yeah. It's like really, because again, I find it quite amusing. But if you think about it, if you stop and think about it, it is so insulting to Karl, because he does try hard. And it's like, but again, we're criticizing that, but that's part of the reason we absolutely love the show, is because Ricky. No, I'm not saying we love the fact that Karl was taking the piss out, but we do like the show. It was better for Ricky not trying, Steve not trying, and Karl trying. It was the perfect combination. It's just, and all the shit. It's just all the stress and everything, like listener feedback, replying to emails, doing quizzes, coming up with competitions, doing the beds, doing the ads, everything, all of the stress of the show was purely on Karl. Ricky and Steve didn't go for any stress. They just sat down and turned up. So although it's funny and it's a funny dynamic and the dynamic kind of works, works very well, but all the stress is on Karl. I'm not surprised he's miserable actually during most of the shows.
The thing is, like, I do have to, honestly, I have to skip that bit just because at the end when he goes bollocks again, it was completely bollocks. And but I would, and he does it a lot more in the podcast. When I know we're not reviewing the podcast, but he swears at Karl a lot more, and
Yeah.
I'm always sure I just find it so repugnant, that behaviour, because I do swear at my friends, but hopefully in a funny way. I'm not saying there's like, I don't know where that line is, yeah, but I just don't like that. I think you should treat people with more respect, swearing, particularly if you're doing that sort of venomous kind of thing. But this whole, so for me, like, the show is kind of always in that spirit. I also feel it's a bit of an off episode. Like, Karl often says, I know. He'll say it sometimes where he says, I knew it wasn't going to be a belter this week. Like, I thought we'd have like one good week, one bad week. I know sometimes when we did the radio show, we'd often say, or at least I would, because I sort of do listen to myself after a bit, just to get in that good realm of, feedback.
He's very arrogant.
It's not. It's
no,
not.
It's not.
I'll tell you,
Actually,
I'll say
Mars is arrogant sometimes, but no. What he just said is totally, like, it's nothing to do with arrogance. He's right, because he debriefs basically after shows, and I don't, because I don't like the sound of my own voice. I
don't like the sound of your voice either.
No one does.
I have to listen to you when I edit it, and I have to cut out all the bits that you show me to cut out because they were not good enough.
If I find out, right, and I start listening back to the shows, and you cut me out of all of them, and it's literally just the Mars Purnell show.
Luckily for me, that will never happen.
Because I won't listen. Yeah, it could be the case. I don't know, but no. Yeah. So you're saying that we had good weeks and bad weeks, and what you're saying basically is that you think this show is an off week.
It feels a bit off. Like, there's another moment where it feels a bit off when Ricky he talks about Stephen looking like the perfect Doctor Who fan.
Yeah.
And he brings out a book and he says that Steve, wrote geek on every page. And Ricky basically, has a go and he says, it does. It looks like you. And whilst he's criticising Steve, Karl carries on with the clues for Rockbusters. So you've got these two voices that are going on. That's happened before as well when he goes, Ricky asks, how's Auntie Nora? And they're having two different conversations at the same time. And just it's a total lack of professionalism.
It's a lack of respect. And actually, the thing is, like, when Ricky could easily have called Karl a dickhead and it not been anything like that. It's his tone that makes it something more sinister. It's like he flips and he's genuinely insulting Karl. Whereas when he insults Steve and he insults Karl in general, I think he pitches it quite well, like it's couched in a joke. It's very jokey and it's funny. It's insulting to Karl a lot of the time, but we find it funny. If we didn't, we wouldn't like the shows in general. But I do agree, there are times, and this week is one of them, where Ricky goes too far and he shows a total lack of respect. And I agree with you, the podcast, I mean, there's some gems in the podcast, there's some brilliant moments, really, really good moments, but as a whole body of work, I never sit down and listen to it. I never listen to it on my, when I'm walking out on my iPod. I've got it on my iPod, I've got all of them, and I've listened to all of them, but
boasting.
It's not the swearing as such, it's more his tone, and it's actually quite nasty, like, and that's what I don't like. But I found the show in general had a lot of good moments. There's a lot of good moments this week. I don't think it's a classic, but it's kind of maybe a rung down from that. It's certainly not the worst show that since we've been reviewing them. So we've done episode 1, series 2 to now episode 22. There's been worse shows than this. Probably if that moment hadn't happened with Ricky, your enjoyment of the show in general would be more. But when I've got those moments that I don't like and I know it's coming up, I always skip the show. So you probably listen to this show less than other shows over the years because you skip it. But
I tell you what, it does have one of my favourite stories of all time.
Can I guess? Can I guess what it is?
Go on.
It could. See, again, there's a few. Is it the pork chop?
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought so.
I love the pork chop story. Just it turns out it was a pork chop that stuck to her ass for 5 years earlier.
I think when we were coming up with the artwork, which Mars's friend did, she's a very good artist, but I think one of the things we were trying to get in, I think a suggestion, I don't think it got put in the end, was like, could you just put like as if they're sitting on a pork chop? It's like there's no way in a line drawing that's essentially got 2 or 3 colours, that's tiny, that people only see small, that anyone's ever going to make out that that's a pork chop. It didn't quite work.
It's just the way he tells that story, and the fact that I'm sure he didn't believe it, but it was obviously.
I think that's a true. I've heard.
But how can that be the case?
I know.
It's not that you would sit on the pork chop, but maybe the pork chop was embedded underneath the cheek of the arse cheek.
Yeah.
And so it's like you're sitting on a pork. Maybe it hadn't digested, or maybe it was just.
No, I think
it just stuck under the skin.
I don't know. But what are you talking about? It's it's a funny story, and there's a few, like, again, this is an example of where I think Ricky plays his arrogance quite well, and it's a different story, and it's the story of Karl when he nearly died,
down Agenbach's.
Down Agenbach, and it's a good story. It's an interesting story, and it's kind of like a little nice anecdote. If that's happened to you, you would tell people, over the years. I think what Ricky's like, again, Ricky does this quite well. You might disagree with me here, but I think Ricky does this quite well when he says, like, because Karl tells the story and how his mum said, so he's going to die then, basically, and then he just left. Like, and Ricky says, I'm not being arrogant. I'm sounding very arrogant saying this, but I just want to say, if I were there, I think I'd have known the doctor was joking. And actually, that's a really quite clever comment, because there's loads of ways you can react to what Karl's just said and kind of take the piss a bit, like saying, what, your mum thought he's going to die? That's ridiculous. But Ricky says something that is quite arrogant, but to be fair to him, he completely prefaces He prefaces it by acknowledging the arrogance, and that takes the sting out of the arrogance and actually just makes it a very funny line, because Ricky's got this a very good knack of kind of saying what's in your head that people don't say. Like Steve doesn't really do it. Steve reacts in a generic. He's very funny, Steve, but he reacts in the sort of way you'd expect a presenter to react. Whereas when I was listening to that story the first time, I was thinking, there's no way I would have believed the doctor if I was there. And he kind of says it, like he knows what the listener wants to hear. So that's an example of. He's a very complex character, Ricky, as we know. We've discussed it at length, but this show shows different sides of him, and I think that is an example of where he gets it right, and he pitches it right. Like, that is an insulting thing to say, but he prefaces it, and he's not in a nasty tone. He's kind of it's taking the piss. But another thing that's kind of, because we're on the subject of Ricky's character and the good things and the bad things. Like, this is another example of where Steve says about the t-shirt, and if by looks of it you're a midget. And Ricky goes, you can't say midget. Now, Ricky absolutely, by far, takes the piss out of people like midgets more than anyone else on the show or most people alive. He's a big piss taker of things like midgets. And he's naughty with it. Like, so he's naughty with things like midgets and different aspects of people that, maybe we shouldn't joke about. But he's kind of naughty with it, and he's naughty on the show, but he's always the first one to say, you can't say that. He's really, like, he's complex. So Steve would never say you can't say midget. But then Steve wouldn't take the piss out of midgets as much.
Steve would want to say it as well.
Want to say what?
Naughty words.
Oh, yeah. See, Steve is naughty too, but Ricky orchestrates the naughtiness, and it's like, it reminds me of when Ricky's like saying, "Oh no, Steve and Karl are really arguing," and he's like, "Oh no, calm down," and Steve goes, "You are the biggest stirrer." Ironically, he's the one trying to calm it down. Like, so Ricky always wants to look as if he's the one saying, "Oh, you can't say midget, can't say," but then he'll dive in, and then again, it's a kind of, and again, we love him. We love him then. We don't love him so much now, but we love Ricky overall. He's a hero of ours, and I can speak for Mars when I say that. And part of the reason he's a hero, people who are geniuses, they are complex characters. They don't tend to be simple. So, I'm not really criticising Ricky for it, but he's got these two sides. What I will criticise him for, absolutely, is when he turns nasty. And it's a good point you made. I wasn't going to make it, but now I think about it, he is nasty this episode. And
I just wouldn't do that to friends. Like,
to me, that's unforgivable. I wouldn't do it to an acquaintance or an enemy, even. I wouldn't. But you must remember, like, Ricky is being recorded for a radio show, so he has every right to use what material he can, including taking the piss out of people. He's willing to take people who are willing to have the piss taken out of them. But what he doesn't have the right to, it always has to be for the purposes of humour, and it usually is. And he pitches it right. He pitches it perfect. But what he doesn't have the right to do is turn nasty and make genuine points that are true, like, or that he feels are true, like, and it's not couched in a joke.
Yeah, you can slag Karl off for, like, getting a Rockbusters clue wrong, but you can't call him a dickhead for doing really nothing wrong. Like,
that's the thing. I don't think that calling him a dickhead is the key bit, because there are not many, but there are different ways Ricky could have called Karl a dickhead, right? That were absolutely in keeping with the sort of general, in keeping with a funny yet considerate show. Like, he could have called him a dickhead. That's not the key. It's the way he says it. Like, he could have said idiot, right, and that would have been just as insulting. It's not the fact he said dickhead. Like, you could say dickhead, like, but I don't know how exactly, but you could say dickhead and it'd be a jokey way. You know how Ricky is.
Yeah.
But if he'd said idiot or prat, I think that would have been just as insulting. It's his tone. Like, he just changes. Ricky has every right, when, like, that's material for Ricky, and so it should be when Karl gets a Rockbusters clue wrong. He should. And the theme of the show is, like, Ricky antagonizing Karl. So in particular, in this show, he has every right to kind of try and make comedy out of it, but he goes way too far.
Yeah. And
it reveals a side of Ricky which I think is revealed more often these days, and it's not a nice one. Like, again, we talked about it before, but the worst moment of Ricky, and we won't get Ricky's worst moments, is not, he has a lot of good moments in this show, and we as I say, Ricky's a hero of ours, but when he talks about Lowry, it's not like, he could insult Karl for liking Lowry, but he could do it in a funny way. But liking Lowry should not be material for humour. It should just be something that Ricky says, I like Renoir or something. That liking Lowry is not a stupid thing, like getting a Rockbusters clue wrong. It's a normal thing. That, like, do you know what I mean? It's a genuine thing.
Yeah.
And it's genuine hate, and it is hate, and the podcasts are full of it. So I don't really listen to them, but anyway. Yeah, that's that moment. Have you got any moments that you particularly like in the show?
Well, I was going to say, they do say at the start, essentially, Ricky and Steve, we don't need to be here. And I think a bone of contention is always, do you think it should have ever have been called the Karl Pilkington show?
No, because I think basically, look, we're going to come to this later, because I put it on Twitter. Actually, Mars put it out, Mars put it into tweet length because I don't understand tweeting, but he did very well there. But I wrote him an essay, as I often do.
Dickhead.
If I've been insulted or something by a listener, I wrote him an essay. But in this case, I wrote him an essay. I said why we should talk about Steve, because Steve gets less attention than Karl and Ricky. Oh, what, are you laughing at my silence?
No, I was laughing at the.
Oh, yeah. But yeah, so yeah, it's basically, I think that Steve was essential to the show. So and obviously Karl is. It's right that it was called the Ricky Gervais Show. Apart from a marketing point of view, Ricky was known by far more people than Steve or Karl was, or the Karl Pilkington show back then. Who, the what? What do you mean? Who's that? Even listeners to the show wouldn't know him that much. We know and love him now because we've got these hours and hours of podcasts. But back then there was nothing. It was just weekly shows. If you missed it, you So it clearly is the Ricky Gervais and Karl Pilkington show. Steve plays a very essential role, but yeah, it's Ricky doesn't even call it. And I bet if he was probably asked at some point that, do you want to call it the Ricky Gervais and Steve Merchant show? And he probably said no, because he does have that arrogance, Ricky. But a lot of successful people who I respect have arrogance. But again, it's quite an arrogant thing, but it's not the worst thing in the world. But I think Ricky secretly loves it being called the Ricky Gervais show. Like, even though he says, "Oh, it shouldn't be called," even it's listed as Ricky or Ricky and Steve.
I know, like, Steve was ever annoyed, like, because they do make several gags in not just on the show, but in like DVD extras and other content. That go, I think we drew it up to this early that Steve would not be earning the same sort of money that I would be earning. I just wondered, like, if Steve did ever get a bit pissed off that. Because I would like to see the differences in their wealth. I mean, clearly Ricky's would far.
Yeah. Well, that's why.
There's a fair compromise there, because other double acts like Mitchell and Webb, started at the same level. But they are on the same level. But I suppose the difference is actually the same as like with Lucas and Williams. Like, they both had completely different careers. Other double acts like stay together, like
Horn and Corden, famously, like I think they did shoot another Gavin and Stacey, so they must be talking.
Well,
but
they did.
For years and years they didn't talk, and James Corden went off on to have they did a sketch show that was panned. It was panned by critics and not watched by people. Now, James Corden had already proved himself as a very, very good writer with Gavin and Stacey, but Matt Horn was kind of left like, oh, I now the only writing I've done is shit, and he's done writing with another person, and it was great. And then they basically fell out, and then James Corden went to America. He's very famous in America, like he's doing the Late Late Show. He's doing really well, and I often think like how horrible that must be for Matt Horn, because. Yeah, and like with Ricky and Steve, it's another example. Like they haven't fallen out as such, but the difference with Horn and Corden, it's like I can imagine Matt Horn being very, very jealous of James Corden's work. However, with Steve, I actually don't think he is pissed off anymore, and I'm really pleased for Steve. The reason is because Steve has done a diverse body of work on his own now,
and that was always the plan, I think.
I don't think so. I think originally it was that they would always work together. I'm not in a position. Don't feel sorry for Steve at all, because Steve has done really well, and he should be very proud of that. But I think in the beginning, he would have been pissed off with that, and Ricky kind of jokes about it. But the thing with a lot of Ricky's jokes are that they're based on truth, so I don't think they cut it up literally that Steve would be earning nowhere near what Ricky earned, but they probably did sit down and cut up that Ricky would be earning a lot more. And to be fair, he is the main actor in The Office.
Yeah,
actors get paid far more than writers.
That would be an amazing conversation to overhear, though, wouldn't it?
Yeah, but I'd love to overhear. But I'd love to have just hang on. I'd love to have been a fly on the wall when they were writing The Office, not to see like. What they're writing onto the screen, just to see what interaction they have with each other as they're writing. Because
I think everyone would want to see that, wouldn't they? Because what jokes made it, who like authored each one, what made it? Because you can speculate as much as what. Like I've got that Office book for you, the BFI, and there's some interesting stuff in there about their dynamic.
Absolutely.
But it'll be interesting to be in the writers' room, as it were.
Yeah, and by the way, listeners, if you want to be a fly on the wall with Mars and my writing, we happily film it and send it off to you. This is not as profound, but no, I think Steve has done fantastic. So yeah, Ricky will be probably be worth maybe 4 or 5 times what Steve's worth, but Steve is still a millionaire many times over now on his own. So like, they still sell the rights. Even the American office, it goes for like this UK office was just too serious, but as American sitcoms tend to do, they keep going if they're getting good audience figures, and they're executive producers of that still to this day. So
it's like you know, sports. It's like sports stars. You know, they make most of their money from partnerships. You know, same with them.
Sponsorships.
Yeah.
But Steve's done incredibly well, and actually you can say, whereas Steve always wanted to get into media, Karl, if we talk about Karl and them, like Karl never wanted to, but actually I think Karl's carved out a really good career for himself as well.
I think Karl had already done what he had set out to do when he joined XFM, which was to get a job in radio.
Had Ricky not rejoined the station, Karl would be head of production today. I put money on that.
Oh, definitely. Well, he was already, you know, before Ricky joined.
That's what I'm saying. He'd be head of production now.
Yeah.
Still, he would be doing
or at a better radio station, one that was the biggest in the building.
I think it'd still be at XFM because you know, I think with Karl, Steve, you said Steve kind of planned things out. I think to an extent he planned things out, but he probably thought, at some point I'm going to do stand-up comedy. At some point I will go to America and try and do some sort of sitcom there. At some point I want to write a film that's kind of thought-provoking and emotional. And he probably thought those in his early 20s, but and he did a lot of them. But his plan wouldn't have gone exactly right. But with Karl is the sort of person who Steve looks far down. There's like a big corridor of the rest of his life. Karl looks down that corridor. He's like, there's a brick wall there because he does like nothing is planned. Like he doesn't see.
Well, he keeps saying if it happens, it happens. You know, which is kind of
and it's
I like that.
Yeah, I think he's enjoyed being on TV, but I think he's genuinely honest when he says, you know, he gets sick of it, and sick of it in itself. The sitcom, or it's not sitcom, but the sort of TV show is, I think, where everything in Karl's career has been leading to. But as I say, I don't think it was leading to it in Karl's mind. Karl's just like, okay, do the show. Oh, Ricky's joined. Right, okay, so I'm doing Rockbusters now each week. And okay, so I'm going to change slightly. And he's really annoying, but he's funny. So, and then they quit the show. Okay, and then they ask him to quit and give him lots of money to come and do podcasts. Like, okay, right, does the podcast. Then they're like, okay, we'll send him around the world. Karl, we're going to send you around the world. So, okay, I'll do that now. So I don't think anything was ever in his plans to do. You know, I don't look at any of them. Clearly, in terms of wealth, it's Ricky at the top, Steve, and Karl. But
then me, like underneath there.
Then me. Actually, I'm below you because I paid out Miles. I think something like £52, and it's still resting in Miles' account. So.
It's still resting in my account.
I've got to stop ordering takeaway pizza. It's just this company, I won't name them because they might be a sponsor one day. They offer, you know, you buy the pizza and they give you another pizza for like $4.99. It's getting 2 huge pizzas, and then I don't eat them all at once. But
the thing is, what happens is the money that you would have spent on a night out or like just going down the pub with a few mates or whatever, if you're lucky enough to have a few mates.
I was going to say,
but you end up spending on like a Deliveroo or an Uber Eats, because that's what I did on Saturday. I was like, my girlfriend's away, and I was like, sod this. I'm gonna get a bottle of red wine, watch Bowie, and have an Indian. You know.
And Miles also
he came round and he cooked for me.
And Miles won't remind me won't mind me revealing this, but he told me like he'd had a couple of glasses of red wine. I am going to say it. If you want to cut it out, cut it out.
Don't
But
worry.
he should leave. And he said, "Oh yeah, I got onto that wine company. What are they called again? What's the wine company? Landau wine, which is mentioned on the Ricky Gervais show." And he said, "Yeah, I emailed them and I was asking them to be a sponsor of the show." As if they would never. And that's funny. That's a very sweet thing. But yeah,
Imagine if they did though. Imagine if we got free
Landau
wine
wine.
and money. Free money.
Free wines. That's
Well,
and then the money. Yeah, it would be quite something. But as yet, unsponsored. The
as yeah,
Trout.
if you're listening, Papa John.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's
Oh,
Domino's actually,
yeah,
but we
all
shouldn't.
right. No.
Oh yeah, they'll get so much publicity. But, yeah, I've been ordering a lot too many pizzas. But anyway, that's kind of like a symptom.
That's the kind of active social life that Gary Forrester leads in his one-bedroom flat alone, crying.
Well, it's an inactive social life.
Before we move on to the top quotes and XFM in the community where we hear your feedback, I think a lot of people will. This episode is notable for its origin of monkey news.
Yeah,
monkey
absolutely.
news?
Now, as I made the point last week, and you didn't realise back then, but that the absolute genesis of monkey news was last week, where the hairy boy raised by monkeys. That's why it's only because Karl did that story then that he's like this week. Oh, I've got another story about a monkey, Steve. So it's like the last week was the first. This is the first one that you could call a monkey news, and then next week is the first one where they use the term.
Do you want to do the jingle?
Well.
Oh, chimpanzee, that monkey news. Yeah.
Monkey news. I like when Ricky does the jingle for, oh, have you got one for Rockbusters? And Ricky goes, yeah, it'll be something like, oh, Rockbusters. Just exactly the same as the Monkey News one. But yeah, it's first Monkey News, and actually one of the only ones that has a large element of truth to it, because that is quite a famous story of Oliver the chimpanzee.
Is it?
Yeah, that it's quite. I mean, it's not well known in the same way that Kylie
NASA's, the moon landing.
It's not like Kylie Minogue, but it's like it's a true story. Yeah, it's pretty much true that Karl does it.
There's in the anecdote that he says, he goes, yeah, but you can't really get that close to apes. And then Gervais just goes, yeah, but what do you mean? Like, he didn't get the joke.
Yeah,
he's talking about, oh, you physically can't get that close to apes.
Yeah, I think so. I'm not sure actually.
No, that's what it means. It means you can't physically get that close to apes. Where he's talking about in terms of evolution, you can't get that.
No. He's talking about because they're aggressive. That's what he's talking about. I'm sure of that.
Yeah. But that's what I'm saying.
Oh, so yeah, you're making them. Yeah, I think so. But I mean, it's an interesting story, a really interesting story about a monkey, and that's kind of.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's in. Yeah, it's an. Do you know what? And Ricky makes this point with other. When Karl does educating Ricky, he's like, Karl's like, do you find that more interesting? He's like, well, Ricky goes, well, simply because I know it's true, it's more interesting. Simply because I know it's true. So because I know this story is true. Yeah, it's interesting that a chimp was taken home, and then kind of it's just interesting anthropologically that a chimp kind of takes on those human characteristics when taken out of its environment, and has that level of intelligence to kind of do things like practically that we would consider human traits, human activity. So I think it's quite an interesting story. Now, don't get me wrong, a monkey driving to Spain in a car is really funny. Like, I find that funnier, but I find this one more interesting.
Me and my girlfriend, we've got God, this has been a very girlfriend, centric episode, isn't it?
Do you want to get a room with her or something?
Well, we do. We've got one room. What next?
Now Miles has got a toilet as well that he's allowed in.
That's true enough. We've got a relationship that is solely based on a social relationship that is solely based on sending each other videos of cats and other domesticated pets. The odd fox, thrown in there. We've got a family of foxes actually that just like nest nest outside our flat. I love foxes.
They're,
But then
they're very aggressive. Like, so never approach fox. There's a
oh,
video
right.
put out where like some kids they try and like just pet a fox and it will bite you. But I agree they are nice animals.
Well,
But
yeah, that's what I mean. You just ruin the majesty of the animal just
sorry,
over your cheap anecdote.
I,
But
I, ru- I ruined Miles's anecdote by
no. But it's like
foxes.
but some within the cats and dogs, I'll throw in the odd monkey one. But she finds monkeys a bit weird and a bit creepy, and I kind of do too because they are so human, aren't they? We do evolve from monkeys, which is a bit weird.
Yeah.
Weird, innit? Weird,
This,
innit?
yeah, this is Anthropological Hour with Miles Purnell. This is a new show he's going to start. This is like the
Are
spin-off.
weird, like the
No,
way
yeah,
they
it's,
learn and touch and feel and it's creepy, man.
I would genuinely like to kind of work at a zoo to befriend a monkey. I would because they are so. Yeah, I'd say they're very very intelligent. They're kind of like if if you get a child like a human child
Yeah,
up to the age of about 3, they're kind of like, but they always stay at that age, like,
yeah,
but they're more, they grow up physically. It's kind of like
they do, kids, they do that.
but they're so they hug, they not no
Yeah.
animals hug, they have sex for pleasure. Gary's looking annoyed. I had to get that one in early. But they only dolphins and chimpanzees do that, so they're very advanced. And yeah, I know what you mean creepy, because a cat or a dog is so clearly an animal. It's so divested from us. It's so different, that you can look at it and it'd be cute. There is a known effect in computers, and actually when you're making a face of someone or something, I can't remember what it's called. If listener knows this, please get in touch with us and let us know. But where something looks cute, like if you put eyes on something, like it could be a teacup or anything, or an animal, or like if you've got a computer generated face that looks a bit cartoonish, it's cute. Gets cuter and cuter as it gets more human. Then it passes a point where it's starting to look so human but not be human.
Uncanny.
It's uncanny valley is, I think, the fact, the uncanny
It's
valley.
true, yeah.
Yeah, so
I learnt about that in my degree, mate.
but I guess that's kind of partly why you find, and other people might find, chimps a bit more not as cute as
I think fine. I like them. Like no, I do like them. I watched the Primate series on BBC. But I don't want to get bogged down in. We've got a lot to get through. Should we do some Let's do some favourite quotes. My husband and go for his favourite quotes.
Just one thing I wanted to say. This kind of does count as a quote. No. It is a favourite quote, but it's not. It's not a favourite quote. But I just noticed this week. The amount of times that someone will start an anecdote, Ricky or Karl, usually Karl, and Steve uses the phrase "troubles brewing" so many times. It's like his comfort blanket is shout.
Okay, so let's do favourite quotes.
First one, yeah. So not in a particular order. We'll do 5 or 6 each. I think that's a good number. Yeah. Just in case anyone else is doing that. No, sorry. Just in case anyone is doing that.
Yeah. What, masturbating over Karl Pilkington?
Yeah. But...
Okay. Suzanne says, "Do you love me?" I'll go, "Yeah, you're all right."
I love, again, Ricky has a great, like, again, not a lot of people would have thought this. Like, Steve would never have said this. It's a great thing to say. It's just funny. Like, I know that's true. I know that's true. Exactly. I can totally imagine him having seen them interact. He absolutely will know that that's true. So that's a great kind of double quote I like. I'll go with it. This is my favourite. This is one we use over and over. We've already used it on the show, but very little preparation. It's just the way he says it.
We've done it before, but of course, 20 pence.
20 pence. That was going to be my next one.
Love that.
A guy on the tube did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this just goes double with this. No, he didn't think you were funny either. Again, that's great. Great Steve line.
Mad world though, innit?
Yeah, mad world though, innit?
That was his only line of defence to that whole chat about concrete.
He does that a few times. Just go mad world, and plays a song. It's big, but there's nothing there.
Yeah, space.
Yeah.
Few Congress tarts. He mentions Congress tarts and also pikelets in the podcast, and he also talks about chips and gravy, which everyone finds really mental. Like, but that's a classic northern dish, isn't it?
Yeah. What do you mean he talks about it? People find it mental.
I think Gervais at one point goes like, he says I couldn't find it in London. Like, people in London find it really weird that you want chips and gravy.
Yeah, it's a bit. It's kind of again. We won't get stereotyped north. But yeah, in parts of the north of England, it is, because if you're in America, you wouldn't even know, like, chips and gravy would be like, that's like crisps, and the gravy they have is totally different to gravy. This is like gravy you'd pour on a roast dinner. If you can. But in the north of England, you have chips, which are fries, with gravy a lot, but in the south not so much. But I don't know. He mentions it, but I think that's okay. This is my last one. And again, I just love they've stopped talking about this like a minute before. Like, everyone had stopped talking. Steve's moved on, Karl's moved on, but Ricky's just he goes, he had a big book, then he had a big book. It just keeps saying little stupid.
I'll often skip the purpley chat.
No, but that
I know. Yeah.
I agree with you. Although I probably, it sounds like you find it less funny than I do. I think there's some value in it, but it's not the best chat. The best thing about it is Ricky. It's like the Only Fools and Horses little car. He just keeps going, even though everyone else has moved on. So go on, maybe do your last one or two.
I've got two. So it's London shit, innit?
Yeah.
I like that. My last one is take a Polaroid. Reg, take a Polaroid. They always use the name Reg when they're doing an anecdote, because Reg, didn't do that, freaking me.
Yeah, do they? I'm just trying to think. Yeah, okay, so they do. They do. Yeah.
Look at my bloody hands, Reg.
Reg, yeah.
That's what's carrying.
Well, it's that classic kind of.
My granddad was called Reg. I guess that's why I find it strange.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Reginald, it's a great name.
Yeah, Reginald, yeah.
Hang on, is that they're both
Polish? No, my other granddad.
Oh, yeah. Mars is multicultural. and Trout's been sponsors multiculturalist.
I'm a pre-Brexit family.
That family, your whole family, would not have met and got together today if it was.
Yeah, maybe not.
So that was our favourite quotes. Do let us know your favourite quotes on Twitter, Instagram, and all that stuff. I don't know. I don't care. But now, speaking of Twitter and Instagram, we are going to do the feature, which was my favourite. I think Mars' favourite as well. I love doing this. Most of the quotes that are read out I haven't read before, so I'm hearing them for the first time. We read out your feedback, basically, and XFM in the community. Yeah, there's a specific question we put out this week, which Mars and I thought about, and then we put it out. So there's a few of them that I've seen, and I'll read some out. But in general, I haven't seen or heard these comments. So I think Mars is gonna start.
Yeah, so we've had some a few new listeners. So welcome to the gang. This is from STPH. Chaps, I've just started your pod with the Dickie Anders episode. Brilliant work, thank you. I'm now going to listen to your pod the way I did the original XFM shows. I love The Office and then listen to the first podcasts. I think through Guardian Unlimited. Then after listening to them, I discovered an XFM compilation online somewhere. I then burned every episode I could find onto CD. I love that.
That's very sweet. Yeah. Thank you, SDTP. Was that right?
STPH.
STPH. Thank you very much. Glad that you're listening now, and hope that you enjoy it. To episode 1. Maybe a bit shoddy, as if this isn't. But yeah, thanks for your comment, and glad to have you listening.
This one's from Ellen Wright. I wanted to open with that I love your podcast. My name is Ellen. I am 18 and I've been listening to the XFM show for years now. I fell into them when I used to listen to the animated shows to fall asleep when I was like 15. From there, I was recommended Monkey News and Rockbuster compilations. I am so interested by the fact that this small show from almost 20 years ago has such a dedicated following. Since being in lockdown, I have been trying to cheer my mum up by randomly giving her Rockbusters throughout the day.
Wow.
It has honestly helped me to help her with the stress of the situation. She nearly died when I told her the Shaka Khan one. Mad how something done from 20 years ago is still bringing people joy. I think Ellen, you're our youngest listener.
Whoa, Potentially, we don't know. But just can I just say thank you, Ellen. That's a lovely email, and really appreciate your kind comments. Really hope that you enjoy the show as you start to listen to more episodes that we've done in the past. Yeah, it's interesting. I think we talked last week about this, that the demographic of a listener that we imagined at the beginning isn't necessarily the demographic that we're getting. So we thought they'd be roughly around our age, but it's great. I think that people that younger are listening to the shows. People who are older are listening, I think, as well, although we haven't heard from them, but I assume that they are. But it's lovely to know that it's touched like a new generation, and it's great that it's cheered your mum up as well. Yeah, thanks so much, Ellen, and yeah, I hope you keep listening.
I love that Rockbusters now become like the at-home entertainment.
Yeah.
We did put out a call out on social media for your best Steve moments, because sometimes he can get overlooked by the general public because, you know, Karl is so interesting as a character. You know, he's got great stories.
The reason I wanted to put it out in particular was it's not just necessarily that Steve is overlooked, but it's much when you think of the show, like we're always thinking about Karl's best moments with good reason. We're always doing that because it's interesting and it's funny and they're brilliant moments, and we're always quoting Ricky, and again, good reason. He's a very quotable guy, but I think it's harder to pinpoint Steve's contributions to the show, even though they are huge and enormous. In my opinion, I think they're massive contributions, because I think it's very easy if you just in most simplistic terms, it's easy to identify Karl's role. Karl is the protagonist of the show, absolutely, 100%. It's about him. Everything's geared towards his reaction to something. Even when he's not in, it's how would Karl would have reacted. It's all the story about Karl's life. He's the protagonist. Ricky is absolutely the antagonist, not in the sense of he's disliked by the audience, but he antagonizes Karl. He's absolutely the antagonist. That's his role. It's harder to pinpoint what Steve's role is. It's harder to just say, if I said what's Steve's role, because it's very fluid, and I think it changes. It goes from one thing to the other. I think that makes him an interesting character. So in general, we don't think to ourselves, oh, what are Steve's best moments? What's Steve's best quotes? But, you know, that's why I wanted to put it out this week, and we've had quite a bit of feedback. So
yeah, let's go through some of it. So this is from Alex Shaw, and he says, a Steve trying to haggle for a laptop, which, you know, that is, I love that moment. Steve trying to haggle for a laptop. The carrot case is free anyway. I said I'll take it.
Yeah, I've often quoted that. I love it. Wernham Blog, thanks for listening. Says Steve was often the more edgy of the three, referring to the women that made a complaint being a bigger person than Karl, headwise. Yeah, I know. That's again, it's a very naughty Steve moment, that. And blurting out that the reason Chris Moore's show isn't on anymore is because it turns out he was too fat and talentless. I think that, yeah, there are times when Steve's more blunt than Ricky and Karl, but I think in general, again, it's kind of easier to like, if we just read you some quotes and said who said them out of the show, it'd be much easier to identify, right, that's absolutely Karl, that's absolutely Ricky. With Steve, it could be, you know, Steve could fit into either camp. So yeah, do you know what I mean by that, Miles?
Yeah, no, definitely.
So yeah, and then we got KT Pepper, the world record for using the word arbitrary, holding a balloon and people arranging to meet back at him as a landmark. Absolutely brilliant. He actually put something on, or someone put something on Twitter, which made me laugh. I didn't see it, but you told me about it.
Yeah, someone had done. There was a picture of it was uniting two of the biggest passions at the Trout spinners, which is Ricky, Steve, and Karl, and Oasis. So it was a picture of basically Steve had circled himself in the crowd of the 1995 or 7 4. Sorry, Gary knows everything about Oasis, and someone had drew a little balloon.
Yeah, but no, what was funny is because like I think the BBC posted saying like, Steve Merchant, is this you? I think they'd circled it because it's just this huge crowd. There's like 90,000 people. There's no way any human being on Earth could be identified except freaks. Like, and I don't know. terrible. But except people who are so freakishly tall, and Steve was just there, and you can just see him above the crowd. And Steve replied, "Yes, it's me," or something, and he got lots of likes for that.
That was about the Bowie. That was about the Bowie gig in 2000.
Yeah, okay. That's funny anyway. But then someone drew a little balloon. But you can imagine like someone in the crowd meeting back up at Steve, because he's the only thing you can see that's constant.
Aww.
Go on. What's the next one?
Well, this one's from Owen O'Sullivan, and he says $3.45 for 5 hamburgers. Steve, it's good, isn't it? It's good value. I love that. Is such a subtle. That's great when he's having that interview at McDonald's with trying to get burgers so that they can do the world record breaking attempt. But that is such a Steve thing to say.
Value, isn't it? Good value,
isn't it?
It's like he's in a queue still paying for the hamburgers at the time. So it's kind of like it's just that's a great.
I
Steve.
love that.
It goes to the bottom of his soul of being like, oh yeah, it's good value. Like because he probably did think good value. That is actually good value. You wouldn't get that now.
So at that time, now it wouldn't cost you. It would cost you way more now.
I don't know how much it would cost, but I know a Domino's pizza. So next, and this is my screen's slightly blocked here, so I'm going to try and read this. This is Cufflink Master Extraordinaire. The show would definitely not be anywhere near as good without Steve. His anecdotes, while few, are always great and well said. Well told. He often sets up a lot of the comedy beautifully. Yeah, very good comment. I think. I mean, some people disagree, but I totally agree with you that the Ricky and Karl show just wouldn't be the same at all without Steve. He plays an important role. It's just harder to pin down. But yeah, his anecdotes. And I've always said about Steve that he tells the best anecdote about his past. Like, out of all of them, like, Karl has the most interesting stories because they're so weird. Horse in house, who can beat that? But Steve tells it better than Ricky tells a story about his past. And better than Karl does, and better than most people I've ever heard. Just the way, and there's a couple of beautiful ones on the podcasts as well that they do. But he's very, very, very good at telling a story.
He's a natural storyteller, definitely.
Well, he's natural storyteller when it's relaying something that happened to him. He's very good at that.
But he's also quite a sort of self-deprecating soul. Like, naturally, he'll always go to the way he looks or like trouble with ladies.
But again, and think of what he lets Ricky say to him, like, that's lanky piss and streak. Now, that's absolutely based on reality. So it's like, because he is so, and he is so thin, so he's, but, so Steve's got a very good sense of humor. He allows a lot of comedy where he's the butt of it. But the interesting thing is there's a dynamic in the show where Karl then, like in the early shows before Karl, Steve's the butt of the jokes, but then Karl comes along and Karl's the butt of the jokes. But there's sometimes it shifts around, and Karl, and they talk about it, Karl steps above himself and he puts Steve down, and then Ricky puts Steve down before putting Karl down sometimes. So Steve's role kind of shifts around. Yeah. It's not solid.
So, this one's from Craig, and he says, just things like his reaction to Karl's rough areas on the boat was incredulous. Don't go starboard. Yeah, I've heard they're rough in there. He says he always sounded more willing to engage with Karl as a kind of voice of reason. So it would be funnier even when Steve would give up.
Yeah, I think he definitely engages with Karl on a more sometimes sympathetic level than Ricky. But then there are times when Steve actually takes the piss out of Karl harder than Ricky would. And again, like I say, it's interesting. I really like these are little moments. They're not funny, but they're just, I really like when Karl says something like, I think just the artists. And there are times, there is a time when Steve, he antagonises him, but it's just, he says something like, yeah, I don't know, what do you think, Steve? And there's another time where he says, so what do you think, Steve? Should we do Rockbusters? And it's just nice. Yeah. It's like, because it's nice to see those two bickering.
He's acknowledged, yeah.
Actually, yeah, they're kind of, he's properly kind of involving him in, and making him feel special. And they kind of do that to each other. They're either really antagonistic towards each other or really kind of brotherly. Ryan, I thought it said Ryan Foot. It's Ryan Foat. Sorry, Ryan. I wasn't taking. I can't. It's a very small text. So Ryan Foat says, "I'm not made of money, Rick, and finding people's names hilarious." Yeah, that's good. And I'm not made of money, Rick. He is made of money. Yeah, Dave Suckling and well, it's mainly Ricky that finds the names hilarious. Sort of Steve just says them out.
No, there was the Gerald Preston thing.
Yeah, Steve picks it out because he thinks it's funny, but Ricky obviously explodes with laughter because of it. But so next one, Daniel says, when Karl was talking about crying at the Elephant Man, Ricky, give him a bun and he forgets it. Steve, he never forgets, Rick. Yeah, there's so many.
That's a big favourite. I had that a few times.
Yeah, oh really? More people said that?
Yeah.
Yeah, again, Steve has really excellent lines, but there are fewer of them than Ricky's. But his lines are great. I mean, we had some in the show today. There was a couple of Steve lines. I can't remember what they were, but I mentioned them at the time and just said that they're great Steve lines. And most shows when we do our top quotes, I always have a Steve line in there. I don't deliberately put a Steve line in there. I'm putting a Steve line in there because I genuinely find it funny. One or two more, I think.
Yeah, so this one's from Tao, and Tao says, Stephen receiving hate mail. Merchant! And when he was reading Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance to impress a girl, or really anytime he tried to impress a girl. Which Zen and the motorcycle maintenance, that has nothing to do with motorcycle maintenance. I checked it out.
No, it's a very.
I didn't know that.
Psychology and it's a philosophical kind of work, isn't it? I haven't read it. I don't know, but it's
not. To do next.
So we had Nick Chester said, according to the laws of the sea, which is very good. Yeah.
And then we've got the last one. This is from Pat's mouth. And it says, Ricky to Karl, don't say crappy or I'll start saying shit and cock and stuff. And then Steve goes, tits.
Tits, yeah. So thanks for your feedback on that. You responded in your not even dozens. It's not even dozens. Like you responded in your singles.
We don't have a go. Don't have a go.
10. No,
you have a go because
No, yeah. I'm having a go at myself, mate. Thanks so much for responding. We did get a good response to that. We try and kind of. Mars says this to me. This is Mars' system, so I'm completely saying I'm saying Mars understands these things when better days to do this than I do because he knows about social media and things. But we try and put stuff out on a Sunday, so we'll come up with a little topic and a few rock busters. But yeah, we really appreciate your feedback. So thank you very, very much.
And do get in touch with us at the usual ways, which is on Twitter at Trout_DE. Or on email, which we always love getting your emails, if you want to sort of say something personal to us or whatever. So you can do that at trout.de.
Email. I will accept all requests.
He will. I'll pass them on because you don't read them, but.
Well, I don't want to read them, mate. I can't read them because I get weird. Anyway, let's not dwell on that.
Anyway, so you can email us trout.de@gmail.com, and you can follow me on Instagram at Duchess_Pennell.
I've actually put in some effort this week. I'm looking forward to this feature. I don't need to scrabble across my room to find my iPod to scroll through and randomly select something that I have to stop on at the time. I thought about one. So the feature is, and Mars is just about to say it.
So this is called the D Trout Spinners Library. Everyone knows, the XFM library. It's a bit shit. So we thought
we'd get some books in there as well because it's a library. We should get some books.
We don't want books. People don't read these days, though. But this is a Spotify playlist that we curate every single week. Gary and I select a song each, and then we plug it into our Spotify playlist, which you can listen in the link in the description. And these songs can often be, they can either be sentimental songs or things that we've been inspired by the show, or they could just be quite a bit more flippant. Yeah, whatever takes your fancy. Doesn't matter. We're free and easy here at the D Trout Spinners.
Well, this week I thought about it because Oasis is very sentimental to me, so I often think no, I'm not picking Oasis song, so because that reminds me of a good time in my childhood, things like that. But there's a band who I completely never think about ever, but they have one of the most sentimental kind of albums for me, and it's the Kooks. Because when I moved to Brighton in 2005, it's like it's the best year of my life, and the Kooks were big then. Like, so I don't remember other bands from that time, or bands from 2006, 7, 8, or 4, 3, 2, particularly very much. But the Kooks were big, and it was always on. It's always on in clubs and bars and things, and it just reminds me of that happy time. So it's a bit, the Kooks. People take the piss out of the Kooks because they say they're manufactured. Probably they are. I don't know. I've no idea, but. And I certainly haven't bought any of their albums, so I'm not recommending the Kooks as a particularly good music choice.
Don't defend yourself. What's your song?
The song I'm going to pick is, I think, their biggest hit. She Moves in Her Own Way.
Yeah, I love it. I used to listen to. Do you want to go to the seaside? You know,
but imagine that song being huge. In fact, that a few months before that, you had literally moved to the seaside.
I know.
On the seaside. It's just it's perfect.
No, I love that. It's so it's very evocative and it's a lovely song.
I can't remember.
Yeah, you know the words and everything. I'm gonna pick Aretha Franklin. You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman. For whatever reason, I was on YouTube as you do, and I was looking at old clips that I like to re-listen to and rewatch, and she was performing this at some sort of event, some sort of ceremony, and Carole King was in the audience. I think it was
was it someone's funeral?
I can't remember, but basically Barack Obama and Michelle Obama, they were in the audience, and also Carole King was there with George Lucas, and Barack Obama was sort of shedding a tear as Aretha Franklin singing a rendition of You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman, a Carole King song, but given it her unique twist. And she was really, she sadly passed away now, but really just so beautiful. Just a woman at the peak of her, just such a powerful, influential figure, and this Motown icon just singing the song. And just, it reminds you of a time when you had a president of the United States that, had some fucking taste.
I think that's at a funeral or a remembrance service for someone. I can't remember who, but it's she almost didn't have a voice. It was like more of a, it was like a message. I don't know, is the best way to describe it, but it's like another instrument, like a voice so powerful. She could sing anything.
Powerful. She really could. She was incredible.
You Make Me Feel Like a Natural Woman probably isn't the most emotional song, but it's hearing her sing it in her power.
It's the whole meaning, the sentiment behind the song is like, it's meant to be sang to a man, isn't it? It's
yeah, of course. But I think that, well, no, my point is not to criticize the song or anything like that. I'm just saying that the fact that Obama cried.
Yeah, I love that.
Probably, and again, yeah, he did cry a few times. It's probably more to do with the fact of her powerful voice, and maybe it's a song between them and Michelle. But yeah, incredible singer, and I admit I don't listen to that much of her, but whenever I hear her, she's amazing. So good choice, mate. Mine is. I think we made two good choices this week. It's the first week we both did some songs that mean something to us, like you usually do, but I just quickly find one. So yeah, it was. But actually, if you've got any suggestions for us to put in the library, what I think we should do is do one of ours, one of mine, one of yours, and
one of the listeners,
and one of the listeners. So
why not?
Listeners, get in touch. Let us know. Hashtag Trout Spinners Library. Do that all in one hashtag.
I love the pretending to know what that
I
even.
I don't understand. But
anyway,
yeah, that is it for today. Thank you for listening. Really appreciate your comments and emails. Please do get in touch next week, and this will probably go out on Friday. So we will see you the following Friday with another show.
Yeah, and it will be, maybe in the pub or maybe not.
Not next.
We'll have to see what happens.
It won't be next week, but in July we're planning to start very
live from the pub.
Start doing live shows again, but not for that. Won't be for probably at least 3 weeks, but we'll see. Anyway, take care, everyone. Stay safe. Goodbye. See you next week.